Guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about my aha moment, how I discovered medical coding was the career field for me. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Okay, guys, so I got this comment and I'm going to read the comment and we're going to get into it. So here we go. All right, so the viewer says, I've been coding for an inpatient hospital for 8 years and I still haven't gotten my aha moment. Blue, what did it take for you to finally have your aha moment? So when I talk about an aha moment, I'm talking about that light bulb moment where you finally get it, where you finally take a moment to stop and look at your career and look at everything that you're doing, and you go from looking at it like it is a job to looking at it like it is what it is as a career. And so having this moment, it wasn't anything like mathematical or analytical or having that instant feeling of, oh, this is it. It wasn't really like that. When I had my aha moment, it was a gradual, just a convergence of different things that happened. And they all happened in 1 year, though I will say that. In 2014, I always say that I had my aha moment. And I had been a medical coder for roughly 6 years at that time. And so I had been in for quite some time, and I had always looked at what I had done as a medical coder as like, oh, I'm a medical coder, this is my job. This is where I go to collect money. This is where I go to get my benefits. This is where I go to have my health insurance. This is what I do, you know? And I never really thought about like having that moment of like, oh, I get it now. This is a career and I'm so excited to do this, you know? And so in 2014, which was the year before when ICD-10 CM and ICD-10 PCS hit, which was in October of 2015. In October of 2014, my facility was busy preparing for the changeover into ICD-10. And so it was all about learning that year. That year was like, okay, we're going to give you these courses and you're going to do this and we're all going to understand what we're doing within a year's time. And so it was that, and on top of, oh yeah, and by the way, you have to keep track of your workload. You still have to work and you still have to learn these things along the way. And in the same year, I had the privilege of being also trained at home. I also was going through another ICD-10 CM preparation program at home. And so I had 2 programs running concurrently. And so I'm learning double the things at the same time. And so while there was some really great things going on in my facility with their program, what was missing in that program was covered by the program that I was going through at home. So there was a lot of filling in the gaps on both ends. And so I thought that was great, you know, and so it made me more confident because I had not just the education that everybody else had in my workplace, but I also had additional education, which really came in handy. And when I was able to help my coworkers, because at the time I was still working in this horrible little tin can of a room. I talk about this horrible tin can of a room. There was 20 of us, 20 women, in bullpens in one room. This room would get loud, it would get hot, you know, and I was on an island by myself by the door, and it was misery because people would walk by, they would shake my chair, they'd pull on my hair, hey girl, how you doing, you know? And so there's really just no privacy. You couldn't do anything, you know, it was just like, oh my gosh, you know, I just want to work in a better place, in a better environment. And me not really thinking anything of it at that moment because I'm thinking this is the way that it is. You go to this place, you're responsible because you have to keep your job so that you can keep food on your own table. You know, me being there by myself and like, okay, I have to take care of myself. I don't have a husband, don't have a boyfriend. I don't have anybody to take care of me. I have to do this for me. And so again, being at work and, you know, going and doing my own thing and just having all of those things, it was just like, okay, I have to do this to be responsible. And so I'm like, okay, this is where I go to collect a check and go home. Well, when they started to incorporate those classes into our work schedule at work, where we had like 6 hours that we had to do a training one day, and then we would do coding for 2 hours. We still had to be able to maintain our productivity and everything, but we still had to keep up with this new training. And when I could explain some of the things that some of the girls were getting caught up on, like, I don't understand injury coding, this sequela doesn't make sense. And when I could explain it, that was very exciting for me. I love to teach, and at that time, I wasn't around my providers just yet. Just yet. I wasn't around them just yet. And so it was the teaching part that I was just like, I would get up and I would be like, okay, it's another work day, but I get to teach today, because we were doing this teach back method thing, and I was really helping people to understand like injuries. And I was just like, this is awesome. This is awesome. And so then I saw that same year that AHIMA was having a conference, and I had never thought to go to a conference before. And they said, well, at my facility, they go, Bleu, you can go to the conference if you want to, but you have to pay for that conference, but we'll give you the time. We'll give you administrative leave to go. And I'm like, okay, that's a fair deal. I could do that. And so I'm like, okay, I could do this, And so I looked, and I was like, it's in San Diego, and Casey and the Sunshine Band was going to be there, and Rob Lowe was going to be a speaker, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, And I had never really met like anybody really famous before, so I was just like, I've been to concerts, but like not like meeting people, And so I was like, okay, I could do this. And they're like, you're going to go by yourself? And I'm like, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of other coders there. Well, it turns out I met 2 awesome ladies, and I have been going to conference with them every single year, except for a couple of years that we all couldn't make it. And we've been besties since then. And so it was just like, it was so exciting to go to this conference. And so I was going to miss a couple of weeks of the training, right? Because or a week or so of the training, because of course I had to go to conference. I had to go, right? So I had to go to this conference, and they were like, well, Bleu, you're okay, because like when we were testing you on what you learned with ICD-10, you seem to be doing very well. You'll be okay, to miss out on this week. So I was like, okay. So I go to this conference, my very first one, and I start seeing all the things that are out there for coders. And it's not just going to conference and going to these meetings. It was going to the exhibit hall and seeing all of the books that were available, and seeing Optum books that were available. And this is not an ad for Optum, but I was just like, wow, like they have like Coder Desk Reference, and they had the not just Coder Desk Reference, but they also had the coding companions, and I learned about those and what were those like. And those were like specialty services, and they had like all of the diagnoses and all of the procedures and all the modifiers and everything pertaining to that particular specialty. And they had more information about it. I was like, wow, this is neat, And so I got a couple of those books, and then I had won some, because like when you're going around, you're doing the raffle thing, you win things, And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is so neat. I was like, I can't wait to go back and show the girls. I can't wait to go back and show the girls, because we're still in this horrible tin can of a room with 20 women, But I'm like, I can't wait to show them. And then of course in the exhibit hall, you get like all of this swag stuff, and pens and bags and candies and all kinds of crazy things, And I'm like, I could bring this back for the girls, This would be so neat, And so I came back with a whole luggage full of just swag stuff, and I brought it in to the girls, and they were like, what are you doing? What is this? And I'm, because I show up, and I have all of this stuff, and I'm like, watch, girls. And I'm like, look. So I pull out all of this stuff, and I let them have whatever they want to, and they are freaking out, because it's just, everybody was so tired already from so much learning. And here I come back, and I had been in a week of learning, but I bring back all these gifts, because anytime any of the other supervisors had gone, they would bring back one bag, and it would have like just little things in it. And here I brought back like bags and bags and bags of stuff, And so just seeing them, and then just like, what did you learn? And what are the things that you picked up while you were over there? And so passing that stuff along, and then seeing the reaction of that click where they had like, oh, now I get it, you know. And so where I get to explain things because I understood. And then it wasn't just about me. It was about others and helping them to understand. And that's when it started to like, now I get it. Because I would, at the time, my schedule was from 6 to 2:30. And, you know, normally I'd wake up about 5 and then I'd be on the road and then I'd get to work on time. But I started to get up at 4:30 because I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get to work. And I couldn't wait to see, like, what could I learn now? What could I do, you know, when I'm going through these encounters? How is it starting to make more sense? Because, of course, when you go to conference, you learn more things. And I learned about some more different websites for anatomy. And I started listening to them. And I was like, that's what that means. That's what that means. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so then I would get to my notes and I would be like, oh, now I get it. I'm like, okay. So I knew exactly where, okay, this means this. So then I can pick up this and I can do this and I can do this. And so then that's when it was really like rocking and rolling. And I'm just like cooking with grease now. And I'm like, yes, this makes sense. So again, I'm excited. And they would see me and the girls would see me start to dress up. I had started to dress up because I had learned from just reading, you know, that year. I was like, okay, how can I make myself a better professional? Because I knew I was going to conference and doing all those things. And they talked about like the importance of dressing up and making yourself look really presentable. Anytime you go out, anytime you go anywhere, it's not just work and not just, you know, going to the church or anything like that. You have to make sure that you are well dressed. You have to make sure that you look nice and you have makeup on. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to start to do this. And I started to do that. I started to dress up in dresses and I started to learn a little bit more about like what fits me best and what, you know, what would make me feel more confident. And the more that I started to dress up, the more the girls were like, Bleu, why are you dressing up? They go, oh, do you have a date? And I'm like, no, I don't have a date. And they go, well, then why are you all dressed up? And I'm like, because I'm coming to work. And they go, you have makeup on? And I'm like, yes, I have makeup on too. You know, like, and they go, wow. They go, well, you don't have to get all dressed up for us. And I go, no, this is for me. This is for me. And wouldn't you know it, the girls started to dress up too. They started to like, oh, well, I bought this dress and I have this dress. And before it was like everybody would show off their purses, right? Whenever somebody got a new purse, it'd be like, ooh, you know, nice purse or, you know, whatever. And so then it turned into everybody's like all of a sudden dressing up. And, you know, it was just like everybody's kind of elevating each other, you know, when they see this. And so I'm just like, this is really awesome. And so that, again, inspired me because I saw that it was just like, okay, you know, this is good. This is a good thing. Because people will, you know, put in minimal effort. And I noticed that when people put in minimal effort and they're just like comfortable and they see the result of that is that other people around them get even more comfortable. And then all of a sudden, nobody's pushing each other to be better professionals, to do things better. But then when this started happening and I started going to conference and I started to, you know, dress up and they started to dress up, and then it was just like, okay, everybody's elevating themselves. And then that's when it was just like, this is a career. This is a career. This is what this is. This is what I love. And the one day that a provider, because at the time we were housed away from the providers. We were having a big, beautiful new hospital being built. And it was early 2015 that we were going to move in. And so we were still out there and we were away from them, and they were in the old hospital, and some of them would come over and they would demand help, you know. And so one day this provider just shows up at the door. He wasn't even in my clinic. And he just shows up at the door and he's like, look, I need some help. he comes right over to me because I'm there and I'm, you know, got a little jacket on, you know, like one of those little blazers, you know, and I've got slacks on, you know, and I've got this really pretty blouse on. And he's like, can you help me? I'm like, sure, you know, what's going on? And then he's like, well, you know, I just don't understand. You know, I had this question about coding and da da da. So I'm like, okay. And so then he's just asking a general question. And I'm like, well, then what service are you, what clinic is this? And then he's like, well, I work in, I can't even remember anymore. And then he's like, and I said, oh, well, his coder wasn't there anyway. And so I was like, okay, well, it's this is how you do this. And this is why we would come up with this type of level versus what you had. And he's like, really? He's like, well, can I get something about that? I said, yeah, sure. And I showed him the reference where to find it and stuff. He said, well, thank you for your help. And I said, okay, no problem. And then he's like, well, it was nice meeting you. Okay, bye. You know? And so then he left and they were like, well, who was that? And I go, well, he was a provider. He just needed help. And he wanted to know about like why this level was dropped. And then he heard about it and he didn't understand. He couldn't get anybody on the phone. And so they go, he could have asked us. And I'm like, I don't know why, you know, but I explained it, you know, it's not like y'all volunteered, y'all saw me, you know, and so, but again, that was just like, that's so awesome. And I love to do that. I love seeing that when he had that aha moment, when he figured it out, when he was just like, oh, that makes sense. I'm like, okay, you know, and, you know, that was part of it, you know, and it was just like, that was just making me want to do this even more. And then early 2015, we moved into the new hospital. So we're still doing some of our classes, but not as rigorous because all of us are starting to get it. And we had already been taking our tests to make sure that we were competent in ICD-10. And so we get to this new hospital and my partner and I moved into an office that's embedded in the clinic, which is even more awesome, right? Because now we get to be around them. And we get to be around our providers instead of just being around each other, you know. And so we could really be hands-on with coaching them and things like that because I'd only seen them one other time. And at that, I was more of a spectator because our supervisor was the one giving the class that day because for some reason we weren't allowed to. I don't know why. Can't remember anymore. But I was just like, okay, you know, this is what it is, you know. But again, that was at that time when I didn't understand. And now I understood the importance of being around providers. But when we had our first class, boy, I'll tell you what, I was nervous. I was very nervous. I was nervous because these were all doctors and they're all young. And so they were all about my age, right? And so I'm just like, and so it was a little weird to me. It was just like, these people are like my age and, you know, my partner is older than all of us, you know, and so it was just weird. You know, the whole dynamic was just weird, but I was just like, okay, I was like, I can do this. But at first I was telling my partner, I was like, I can't do this. She goes, yes, you can. She goes, it'll be all right. She goes, I'll start first and then you can go. So I said, okay. And so when it was my turn to speak, I was a little wobbly at first, you know, because I was nervous, but then I just relaxed and then I started to get into it as I was talking about the coding. And you guys have seen me, if you watched any of my videos, you've seen how I nerd out when it comes to the coding. So imagine that being in person. So we were giving this class and I was like, okay, so I started getting into the coding. And at the end of the class, you know, by then everybody's like, you know, talking and we're having really good feedback. And, you know, there's a few people that are just, you know, like they get it now. And so then one of the doctors goes, hey, don't you drive that? And I'm going to say, because I drive a sports car, but I don't want to offend anybody. So I'm not going to say the sports car that he said. And I said, oh, no. And so then I tell him, I was like, no, this is what I drive. And then he's like, oh, because I saw you. And I was like, oh, okay, you know. He's like, so what kind of engine power do you have? So I started getting into it. I was like, you know, V8. And so I'm telling him. And so we're sitting here going back and forth about cars. Well, I noticed when we start talking about cars, like all of a sudden all these other doctors, their ears perk up. They're like, you drive that? And so like, how fast does it go? And where you take it? Do you go out on the track? And I'm like, so we're talking about all these things and they go, you're so short. You drive that fast car? And I'm like, hello, you know? I was like, you can move the pedals, you know? And so, it was just a good way to connect, but it was just that little icebreaker about cars. And that just opened the door to, like, these are just normal people. They're like me and like you. And that's what I told myself. They're like me and like you. And all I have to do is just start to relax, and it'll be okay. And then we get this kind of rapport being built. And we get this kind of good communication going. There's no telling what's going to happen with these encounters. And so as I started to, bond with them and really get to know them and things like that, I started to really be able to talk to them. And, we start talking, and, we start learning more about, they learn about more about what I do, and I learned more about what they do. And so that things made sense. Like, I didn't know that, like, PRP was such a long procedure. I didn't know. I thought it was a short procedure. And they were like explaining to me, like, no, it's this and it's this. And they're explaining all these things about PRP. It's a procedure that happens in the clinic. And so I'm like, oh, wow, so it's, again, learning more and having that. And then just like, okay, this was really awesome, and that was how I got it. And ever since then, it does not feel like work. There is times when it does feel like work. I will say that, though. But those are like, because it's like chore stuff that you have to do at work, like reports or not education, but like doing those little training things like for HIPAA and things like that, and the repetitive stuff, and so, harassment trainings and things, that's the thing that becomes more mundane, and that's the chore stuff of work that I don't like to do. And that's, to me, is work, but when I'm working through the encounters, that's not work. That's not work. And that's 90% of what I do in a day is work those encounters. And that's not work. And it just makes me feel so happy that I'm a coder and that I get to enjoy what I do. And then in 2018, when I felt like there was a need for, somebody like me to talk frankly to all of you that are out there that are new, I was in a park, and I was walking around the park with my friend, and she's like, Bleu, you should be a teacher, because we had some kind of class, and I was able to explain something about injuries and things like that. And she's like, you should really think about being an instructor. And I was like, I think I should be on YouTube. And that's how it all began. And ever since then, here I am. It's been an evolution of my channel, though, because in the beginning, I didn't know. I was like, how often should I post? And, what should I talk about? I'm going to run out of things to talk about. You guys sure make sure that I have nothing to run out of talking about. So keep your comments coming, and, keep your questions coming, and make sure that you take a look through the videos, because trust me, I've probably already done an episode about it. But it's been a while since I talked about my aha moment, and, I just thought that this would be kind of neat to talk about again, and I like talking about it. It makes me happy. But anyway, so that's my show, and that's how I realized that medical coding was a career for me. And when I gave up that part of myself, that part of like, oh, well, it's about me, it's about me, it's about me. When I gave that up and I started to see, how can I help this person to understand coding better? How can I help this person to understand coding better? And it's a mix of doing trainings and things like that, with people, and then going to conferences and things like that, and building my knowledge base. That helped me to realize it even more. And when you do that, when you realize that it's not about you, it's about others, and how you can be of service, especially when it comes to something like this, something as serious as medical coding, that's when the magic happens. And trust me, when you start seeing that, when you start changing things up with how you are, and you don't just stick with the status quo, you don't say this is the way we've always done it, and this is the way we're always going to do it. When you start to look at other points of view and other perspectives, when you start to open those doors of communication with your providers, you take the time to get to know them. You take the time to understand why they react the way that they do. You take the time to learn body language. And so that way you can use that as a separate tool to help you when you're trying to communicate with somebody. Because when you communicate with somebody, they're not always going to tell you. They may tell you oh yes, I understand, but their body language is telling you something completely different. So words and actions are two different things. And when you learn that as well, oh, trust me, there's really nothing that can stop you, because that will save you from either a lot of heartache or from wasting your time. I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share. And I will see y'all next time. Bye.